there has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch, Michael by there.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran, retired out of Manhattan North Homicide Squad. Did 16 years of my 27 in the Detective Bureau. Started out in robbery, then in the regular squad, and then 10 years in homicide. Folks, this case we're doing, this Debbie Collier case, we don't ever want to lose sight that there's a real human being at the end of this investigation. And we follow it and we predict what happened. We look into it. As I say, we hypothesize and we theorize. Phil would say we spitball. We look for reasons. We look for evidence. We look for why did this happen? How did this happen? And ultimately, it's up to the police to determine this. And the talent that they have, or the lack thereof they have. And I think that in this case, I think they're on the right track. I really do. I think they're working really hard on this case. Have there been some mistakes? Yes, but there's mistakes in every homicide investigation. And there's things that if you could do them over, and with 2020 hindsight, you might do them differently. However, you only get to do it once, you know. I think in the book Practical Homicide Investigation by Vernon Gebeth, who's a former NYPD squad lieutenant, he said, do it right the first time because you don't get a second chance to do it correctly. You know, so it's the old thing that you got to make sure this is an unforgiving business, you know, and we can't also ever lose sight that we're working for the victim. And as also said in that book, Practical Homicide Investigation, is that we work for God. We work for a higher power. We're working to find out who did this heinous crime to Miss Debbie Collier, 59-year-old housewife and mother and employee of a real estate office manager of a real estate firm. Seemed like a really nice woman, but we want to find out. We want to use our investigative talents. We want to use science. We want to use the art of investigation to find out who did this and bring that person or persons to justice. You know, some of the things that I was a little bit concerned with, and I saw the some pictures, and I don't know exactly who took these pictures. They were on the internet, of course, and it was of the crime scene, or purportedly to be of the crime scene. And in these pictures, it showed that whoever responded had left gloves on the scene, gloves that they may have been wearing when they were examining the evidence. And the scene was photographed. It appeared to be after they had left, and I don't know how I surmised that, but it seemed that certain things were left behind. Now, the procedure for a crime scene, obviously, is to keep it as pristine as possible. Keep the crime scene pristine, but the first persons or people that go to the crime scene are the detectives, or for probably the first ones that are going to discover it are patrol officers, uniformed officers, and they would secure the scene, wrap it with crime scene tape to keep people out. In a crime scene like this that was in the woods, you really shouldn't have much of a problem keeping people out of the crime scene because you'd have to know where it was to get to it. But when crime scenes are on the street or they're inside a building, the biggest violators of going into a crime scene are other cops. So those are the people you have to keep out, you know. But everyone wants to go into a crime scene, and there's something called Locard's theory of exchange, and for a very good reason why you don't go into a crime scene. when a human being goes into a crime scene, they bring something from the outside into the crime scene. And when they leave the crime scene, they take something from the crime scene out with them. So they've contaminated it in two different ways. One, they brought something into the crime scene that's on their body. And B, they've taken something out of the crime scene that either from stepping on something, touching something. After all, things like fingerprints, they're made of liquids and they dissipate very easily. In essence, if someone rubs up against one, they could totally obliterate a fingerprint. Same thing is true with blood evidence. So all of these things are reasons why a crime scene has to be protected and kept as pristine as possible. And it's not an easy job to keep a crime scene pristine. And as I said, the hardest people to keep out of a crime scene are other cops. Now, this crime scene was in the woods. I want to know, and this has been published anyway. I don't think many people on uh, YouTube or the content creators have asked this question. What did they find in the crime scene by way of evidence? What was found? I know it was published that all 4 items that she had bought in that convenience store was recovered: the tarp, the rain poncho, the paper towels, the torch lighter, and of course her cell phone. All of those items were recovered. So what do we get from that? What is important about that? Well, did the killer or killers touch the tarp? Did the killer or killers touch the rain poncho or the paper towels or the torch lighter? Was that what was used to burn Debbie Collier, the torch lighter? If that's the case, then isn't there good potential that there's a fingerprint or that there's DNA on that torch lighter? So all of those things are questions I would ask as an investigative boss if I was in charge of this. What are the results of the evidence we collected? Um, Now, as I said, the first thing that is done at a crime scene is you would take photographs of it to capture the crime scene in its original form. Because once you start examining the body and moving the body and walking through the crime scene, you've just altered it. So the very first thing you would want to do, as we have in the NYPD of what's called a crime scene unit, is they would photograph it. Because how long is it going to stay pristine? How long is it going to stay unmolested before people go into that crime scene and start walking around, kicking things and knocking things over? And again, low cards theory of exchange, bringing something from the outside in and taking something from in out. So the very first thing they would do is take photographs, capture that scene in its original condition. Then they may want to take measurements, and they take triangulation measurements. They take measurements using potentially they could use a tree and say this item or that item was found 15 feet from the tree identified as the oak tree in the middle of the crime scene. So they do and that's a way, because down the road, if and when this case goes to trial, crime scene detectives have to have very exacting measurements and very exacting ways to record evidence, because on the other side of that courtroom is a defense attorney who's trying to create doubt, and he's going to try to create doubt in ways of impugning the credibility of the detectives that did the measurements, that collected the evidence, that took the photographs. And if the crime scene process is done to the point where it's so professional and so impressive and so complete, and there's nothing left to the imagination, then the defense attorney is going to have a very difficult time to impugn the integrity of the detective that did all that work. So I just want to mention that. The other thing is, what did they collect from this crime scene? I want to know that. What evidence items did they collect? And then part B to that, what tests are being done on the items they collected? If they collected a burnt poncho or a burnt tarp, what evidence tests, what tests are they going to have done on that tarp? Are they going to have the tarp swabbed for DNA? Are they going to have it dusted for fingerprints? What are the tests? I want to know. I want to know. And where did it go? Who's doing the tests? All of those things are super important. One of the things that disturbed me about seeing these photographs, and again, I cannot attest to the fact that the photographs that I saw that were posted on the internet were of an official nature. I don't think they were. Someone may have went into that crime scene after the police left. However, the crime scene was left in a condition that bothered me. It seemed that there was evidentiary matter left behind. There was gloves, rubber gloves left behind in the crime scene, the packaging from those rubber gloves, and some matter that looked like garbage. I mean, there's a potentiality that the crime scene detectives or others may have to go back into that crime scene and do a recanvass. You've just contaminated, of course, to process it, but did you really have to leave garbage there? That bothered me a little bit, because there are times when crime scene and detectives have to go back into a crime scene for a recanvass. If that's how the crime scene looked, how would that look to a defense attorney that was how it was left after the investigators left? One of the things that I really want to know is the condition and the position of the body. What was the condition of the body? Um, we're hearing that she was lying face up with her right hand was grabbing the branch of a tree, and that she had evidence on her abdomen that they had burnt her, they had set a fire. Um, that's important to photograph all of those things, because besides the fact that there's an autopsy, there should also be an examination of the body at the scene. Many times, what's called a medical legal investigator, and in many jurisdictions, the medical legal investigator is a nurse practitioner. So the medical legal investigator has a great deal of education. That you're not just someone that took a civil service test. A nurse practitioner, or in some instances, physician's assistants. This is not a really good. This is the Habersham County. They have a coroner system, and this isn't really easy to read, so I'll actually pull it off the screen and I'll read it to you. Uh, the coroner's duties, as required by law, can be divided into three major categories: investigative, judicial, and administrative. Um, so with this coroner system, the coroner should go to the crime scene. Uh, Title 45, Chapter 16 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated, requires the coroner, along with a law enforcement officer and medical examiner, to investigate the following types of deaths that occur within their various jurisdictions as a result of violence: by suicide or casualty, suddenly when in apparent good health, when unattended by a physician, in any suspicious or unusual manner, after birth but before 7 years of age, if the death is unexpected or unexplained, as a result of an execution carried out by pursuant to the death penalty, or when an inmate or a state hospital, state, county, or city penal institution dies. What I was trying to really get to that is what's most important to me, as it basically states in here that at the scene of a homicide, the a law enforcement officer must be present, um, which would also indicate that the law enforcement officer should be required to be at an autopsy. So um, we're hearing that the officer, well, the results of the autopsy of Debbie Collier are not in. I don't know if I totally buy that. I think they may know because look, they're telling us the manner of death is homicide. That's what the police are telling us there. And they're ruling that, not the medical examiner. They're ruling that themselves. Ordinarily, this should be ruled on by the medical examiner. However, the police are telling us that this is a homicide. Oh, okay. So then, if that's the case, we should know the cause of death. And as of we're into the third week of this case, we don't know the cause of death, but we're hearing that we're being told it's a homicide. And I told everyone yesterday the word homicide simply means death caused by another. Can a homicide be non-criminal? Yes. In this case, is it undoubtedly criminal? Yes. You know, how could a homicide be non-criminal, you might ask? Someone could accidentally kill somebody with no intent. No intent. They may have been trying to save them. For example, someone could be having an epileptic fit and they could try to hold them down so they don't do damage, and as a result, cause restraint, asphyxia, and cause their death. That could be ruled a homicide, yet it's non-criminal. Or the facts that I just described would be non-criminal. Um, let's get back to the condition and the position of the body. Um, what a medical legal investigator would do, and that's the person who I said is either a physician's assistant or a nurse practitioner, at least in large cities, that person is. They would be in charge to do the examination of the body in the presence of the police. And what some of the things they would be looking for is cuts and bruises, wounds, potentially stab wounds, gunshot wounds, petechial hemorrhaging of the conjunctiva of the eyes, and that's the white part of the eyes, because that is one sign of asphyxia or strangulation. When someone is strangled or someone dies from asphyxia, in the struggle to breathe, they break blood vessels in the white part of their eyes, and that is just one potential sign of asphyxia or strangulation. Um, they want to look at the body to see if if it's in rigor mortis. That's one way to determine time of death, rigor mortis. Temperature is always taken. Is temperature a good indicator of time of death? Not when the body's outside and it's cold, because the body's temperature is going to drop rapidly because it's outside where it's colder, unless the temperature is 80, 90 degrees. Then the body temperature will drop, and then you could probably tell better how long the person has been dead. However, rigor mortis, when the body is outside, is a better determiner of time of death. Um, the medical legal investigator also wants to look for other signs, marks, examination of the neck. Is there bruising on the neck? Is there a ligature mark? Is there any other signs of asphyxia? So this is all done on the scene to determine whether first of all, look at common sense wise. Here's a healthy woman, Debbie Collier, 59 years old, winds up in this part of the woods. Her car's parked about 100 yards away, and she winds up lying on her back, grasping the branch of a tree in some semblance of being naked, with a sign of being burnt on her abdomen, and she's dead. What with that set of circumstances, what would 99% of people finding a body like that think? Would you think, oh, she came here and just died of natural causes? No, there's something very wrong with that scene. Something very, very wrong. So now you're an investigator. What are you looking for at this crime scene? You're going to look for you're going to look for a weapon. You're going to look for signs. Is there a gunshot wound? How did she die? It doesn't look like the fire or whatever they used, that they burnt her, if that caused her death. Is there blunt trauma? What does her head look like? I question if she fell and grabbed with her right hand the branch of that tree, did she fall because of blunt trauma? Was she shot? Was she strangled? All of those things leave different markings. The marking of death caused by that specific cause of death: asphyxia, strangulation, gunshot wound, blunt trauma. They're all going to use the telltale signs. So that's why I'm questioning this crime scene. And again, when the Haverstrom police came back with the term, this death was personal and targeted, I took that to heart. I took that to mean someone very close to Debbie Collier killed her. All right. Either a family member is involved, could it be her husband is involved? But it was personal and targeted. All right. And when you look at the facts and circumstances without having all the evidence back, when you look at the facts and circumstances of this case, it screams that. It screams this is personal and targeted. And I really hope that the Haberstrom detectives get their evidence and they start putting this evidence together and they start moving toward the person that did this. All right. Yes, it is personal and targeted. In homicide investigation, probably 70 to 80%, and I don't have the exact number, the FBI puts out these statistics. In 70 to 80% of these cases, the victim and the perpetrator are known to each other. Is that a little bit scary? Yeah. So 70 to 80% of the time, the victim of the homicide and the perpetrator know each other. Yeah. So when homicide investigators look at a case, they're always, the first place you look is the closest people to the victim, the family members. All right. You're going to look at that and you take a deep dive. And one of the ways you find out information that you ordinarily don't find out, you don't just go to the family, you go to friends, you go to people they work with, people they see every day, associates, friends. Best friends usually know more about a person than anybody else. And they're ready to talk, because what do they have to lose? They're going to talk. They're going to tell you what they know about the personal life of the person you're inquiring about. So that crime scene is so important, and the initial examination, I can't say enough about it. That report done by the medical legal investigator with body temperature, whether the body was in rigor mortis, they also take photographs of the body. They do a complete examination. That goes right to the pathologist that's going to be doing the autopsy. I've been at hundreds of death scenes, and I've watched the medical legal investigators do their work, and I've watched them find gunshot wounds that were so small that you had to be trained in what to look for. Some got, a 22 caliber revolver makes a very small entrance wound. Let's not forget, an entrance wound from a firearm is usually small. The entrance of a bullet is small. The exit wound, if a bullet does exit, that's larger and causes much more damage than the entrance wound. So if it's a small caliber firearm, it's sometimes difficult to find the entrance wound. However, the exit wound causes much more trauma. I'm just trying to give you this information so you know what these medical legal investigators are looking for when they do the on-scene investigation and examination of the body. And as I said, they want to examine the neck, go do a thorough examination of the neck? Are there, when someone puts their hands around someone's neck and puts pressure on it and the person's alive, it leaves bruising that you can see. All right. So, someone that's alive, obviously, and someone strangles them with their hands, they're going to leave behind bruising. So, a medical legal investigator would look for that. Same thing with if someone comes up behind you, you see these MMA fights and you see these rear naked chokes. That's not going to leave the type of bruising. However, what it will do, it'll leave signs in the eyes. Petechial hemorrhaging will leave a sign of asphyxia or strangulation. So all these are little physical examination tools that the medical legal investigator will look for in the examination of the body and in his or her report to the pathologist that's going to be followed up with an autopsy. All right. Another thing I was a little concerned with, and we didn't hear a lot of people talking about this, the van that Debbie Collier rented, the van that was parked outside and within how she got to that crime scene. That is a crime scene. How thorough, I know, of course, they invoiced that rental van, but how thorough did they go over that van? That, as I said, is a crime scene. And the possibility, was there anyone in that van with her when she pulled up? I want to know that. How could we tell that? Well, is there anything left behind in the van that indicated that someone was sitting in the front seat or in the rear seat? Is there any evidence that there was another human being in that van? Very important. All right. Then, of course, they're going to do the forensic examination of the van in regards to how many miles did she drive from the time she rented that? The black box, we went through that on the Kylie Rodney case. Does this van have a black box? They found this van through the satellite radio, gave a GPS coordinate as to where this van was. The local police, they reported to the Haversham police that they saw that van there the day before. And I don't know the exact time, maybe it was 5 p.m. So that van was probably there for close to 18 hours. And it was never reported. All of those things are extremely important. Again, how many miles was that van driven? Is there any evidence inside that van that there was someone else inside that van? There's a picture of the van right there. All right. People wanted to know when she made that Venmo transfer and if they can actually ascertain that it was in fact from her phone, which they've been unable to do so far. They've been unable to tell us that, which I find a little strange. How are they unable to, in 3 weeks, not tell us that Venmo transfer that went to her daughter? Well, Les Pony, thank you so much for the 1999 Super Chat. Supreme Commander, did law enforcement get photo evidence to see if the victim was driving away from Dollar Tree or another person driving? Willis, I don't know specifically if they have photographic evidence. I believe they have evidence that shows her getting into the vehicle. You'd have to really get a very close-up photograph to show that. And I'm not going to say verify something I really don't know. I don't know. Just as I don't know, was there anyone else inside that van with her? I don't know that. That's a question I have too that is very, very interesting. And I was going to get to that. I want to know, and this is why I have like 8 questions from the crime scene. And one of the questions I have is, how did the perpetrator or the perpetrators get to the crime scene? Did anyone think that? How did they get there? Was there another car parked next to that van? Then wouldn't that leave tire tracks? Did the police check for that? Or did they come through the woods and were secreted in the woods and she was directed to a spot. Interesting. How did how did they get into the crime scene? How did they leave the crime scene? Did they go back out to the road where they had a car? Or did they walk through the woods and had a car parked somewhere else? This is really important stuff. Areas of entrance and exit. So important in a criminal investigation. How did the perp or perps get into the crime scene? How extensive of a canvas did the Haberstrom police do of that crime scene? Did they canvass the entrance and exits? Because guess what? When a perpetrator is dumping evidence, they dump it usually on their exit out of a crime scene. If there was a handgun, if there was a knife, if there was an object that caused blunt trauma. Because look, I don't know. I don't know the cause of death. If she died of a gunshot wound, might they not have dumped the gun inside that woods? How extensive of a canvas did they do? I'm asking these questions. And again, some of my questions could be null and void if they can tell me, oh no, she was strangled, or no, she was hit with a blunt object. Then did you find that object? No, she died of a gunshot wound. Then did you find a gun? Did you find a spent shell? I know that they found a live rifle shell within the area of that crime scene. And we don't know, because we don't know right now the results of the autopsy. We don't know if that live rifle round has anything to do with it. Was she shot? We don't know. So all of these things I really want to know. I really want to know, how extensive was your canvas of that crime scene? Areas of entry and exit. So important in a case like this. Unbelievably important. Also, when I get getting back to that van, examination of the van, part of that examination be to photograph that van, right? And then the results of the examination of the interior of the vehicle and any evidence that anyone else was inside the vehicle with Debbie. And of course, miles driven. How many miles did she drive? How many miles were on the vehicle when she rented it, when she first picked it up? Could the amount of miles driven mean anything to this case? And not just on this day, from the date she rented it to the date that she was killed. How many miles were driven on that? Then, of course, we want to look at the GPS, the black box examination of the vehicle. Are there any license plate readers in that area? They were looking, and the police were requesting that businesses within that area respond to them in regards to video that they might have of the car going by their business. So if they're asking for that, think of the technology of license plate readers, which I'm not sure if they exist in this part of Georgia, but huge investigative tool for the police all over this country. And again, they were asking businesses, share your video with us.
So according to the original report sent out, the van was seen by Tallulah Falls officers sitting there on the side of the road around 5 o'clock Saturday.
I believe so.
And of course, when you all got there, the van was there on Sunday.
Correct.
Is it y'all's impression that the van was there that entire time, from 5 o'clock till?
Well, obviously, from our timeline, we know it wasn't there the entire time.
It was not there?
So
From-
you home.
From 5 p.m. Saturday.
No, 5 p.m. Saturday.
To 11-ish, 12-ish when you guys got there
Okay.
Sunday, did it ever leave that location?
Now that we're not aware of.
Okay.
When you said the 5 o'clock thing, I didn't know if you were talking about Friday, but
No,
as
Saturday.
far as the timeline, the only times we can establish as far as that van is there is that we're still getting trickling information. I think there was another question in here, if there was any tips from the community that have helped us out. Yes, because it has helped us narrow down timelines. We're still following up to see if we can actually get confirmation of this van being there at certain times. But as of right now, from what we know, that van was there at the crime scene on Sunday, is what we can confirm. Now, as far as her time getting back to the crime scene, we cannot confirm that. We're still working with leads and trying to confirm that information.
Folks, someone just asked, is the crime scene, is the autopsy report in? And the answer right now is no. And that could be a strategy. That could be strategic, that the police don't want that out there right now. That very well could be, because I find it hard to believe that the autopsy in a case like this isn't completed yet. I could understand toxicology, which usually takes between 6 and 8 weeks. But the autopsy, they should have the cause. They really should. And we're not finding the cause of death right now. Again, I think it may be strategic, that they don't want us to know yet. And they don't want, of course, the person or persons that did this to know yet that they know the cause of death. So it should be, it should be available. And again, it's not. So we play a little bit of this.
Of an Athens mom who disappeared and was then found dead near Tallulah Falls.
Investigators today saying there is no evidence that this was a random attack. They are calling her death deliberate and personal. 11 Alive's Kiris Belger has the latest from the Habersham County Sheriff.
Today, investigators released a new photo of the car Debbie Collier was driving when she died. It's the latest clue in what they say is a very complex case. Today, investigators gave us this photo of the black Pacifica Debbie Collier was driving the day she disappeared.
She was seen traveling northbound on Georgia 15, just north of our crime scene.
The image was captured on Tallulah Falls school cameras and is timestamped 2:17 p.m. on Saturday, September 10th. Her car and body were discovered about 24 hours later off an old logging road. Lead investigator George Kaysen says the photo could help them narrow the timeline of events that led to Collier's death.
We're still following up to see if we can actually get confirmation of this van being there at certain times.
Earlier this week, 11 Alive obtained this footage of Collier at a dollar store the day she was reported missing. She's seen buying a poncho, torch lighter, and other items, most of which investigators say were recovered at the crime scene. 20 minutes after she was seen alone on that video, her daughter says Collier sent her a Venmo for nearly $2,400 with messages saying, "They are not letting me go." Kaysen says they're waiting for phone records to determine if Collier did in fact send that message, and for an autopsy to be completed to determine how she died.
We have not changed our thoughts about this being a homicide. We're still treating this as a murder investigation, and we will not change that.
Investigators say no one has been ruled out as a person of interest, but they're still trying to piece everything together. In addition to looking at phone records and conducting an autopsy, investigators say they're looking at camera footage from the surrounding businesses and also bank records. In Habersham.
So, folks, HXFX, thank you for the $9.99 super chat. Asked, do they know where the money is now? Did the daughter give it back? I think it was joint account with the husband. I believe that the money, of course, did go into the daughter's account. What she did with it, or I would imagine it would be frozen right now, pending this investigation being completed. But strange to me that they can record it going in, but they can't tell us, or they're not telling us, what phone did it come from? What device? And that doesn't have to be a phone. What device was it sent from? Was it sent from a laptop? Was it sent from Debbie's phone? Because it was sent on that date at 3:17. That was, I believe, the Friday when she was outside the dollar store. And they could tell us what time, but not the device. I'm having a problem understanding this because I use Venmo. I send it, and the person that you send the money to has to be registered with Venmo with their bank account, and the money goes straight from your account into their bank account. So I'm having a hard time believing they're not tracking this. I think they're probably just not telling us. So very bizarre, very bizarre. A lot of stuff, a lot of the information, a lot of the evidence should be back. And I think that we're all sort of thinking that, this isn't like when you think about, our job as me as a content creator, former homicide sergeant, is to predict who did this. No, I mean, I think it's to tell how law enforcement is working this case and investigative techniques and where they are looking or should be looking. Those are all things. And look, anyone that's listening to this, or a real crime fan or a subscriber or a fan of this type of podcast, you want to know what happened, and you want to make your own educated guess. Phil and I talk about, I talk about hypothesizing and theorizing. He talks about spitballing. And I would imagine many of you guys, subscribers and part of the Police Off the Cuff family, part of the YouTube community, you want to predict, how the hell did this happen? What happened? And what are the police doing about it? Everyone wants to put it on the police. Well, what are they doing? How come they haven't made an arrest yet? This is what I would do. This is what I think happened. Something? We all have opinions. And when we put together the possibility of what occurred, guess what? There's millions of possibilities. And yes, we look towards the probability to look for a suspect. And especially when the police said this death was personal and targeted, and it's a homicide. And as I taught you the other day, a homicide is death caused by another, right? And in this instance, it's certainly a criminal matter. So it's a murder, right? Let's use a different word. This case is absolutely a murder. And we're all hoping and praying that this family gets closure. And we're hoping that whoever did this is brought to justice, and is punished for this. It's, no one ever wants to see anyone get away with a murder, especially of a nice lady like this. It's just heartbreaking.
Habersham County investigators have an update in a Georgia mother's disturbing death. She was found partially clothed and burned in a heavily wooded area more than 50 miles from her home. Fox 5's Kevin Stewart has more on this disturbing case.
Yeah, this morning was the first time that reporters got to talk to investigators first face to face and ask them more specific questions. And I can tell you that they are trying to scour the entire region, looking for pictures and video, try to connect the dots and trace Debbie Collier's movements. And to that end, I want to show you this video. It's actually a snapshot that was just released this morning, the day before she was found dead. This is her car driving northbound on Georgia 15 around 2:15 on September 10th. That would be in the direction of the Clayton Family Dollar. That's where she was last seen alive. This afternoon, investigators say they will release a new video which shows her leaving the Family Dollar and sitting inside her car for about 10 minutes until about 3:20. Keep in mind, it was about that time Collier's daughter said she received money from Collier through Venmo and a note saying, quote, "They are not going to let me go. Love you."
It was at 3:19. Because we see her in that vehicle parking lot heading southbound on Georgia 15.
There is no information or it was something random, that there was something that was out that was not from somebody that she either knew or somebody who she had some association.
Sorry, guys. It's the screen has frozen up for a second here. There we go. It unfroze. So you hear the police very confident in stating the fact that this is personal and targeted, and I think that's the first time in my one of the first times in my homicide career that I heard those terms being used. This is personal and targeted, and which makes me believe they're very, very confident of what the hell happened here, and they're just moving toward getting the evidence and bringing the person or persons in that committed this heinous crime. Um, I was also looking at the crime scene, and someone asked in the chat just before, did they recover Debbie Collier's cell phone at the crime scene? And the answer is yes. So big piece of evidence, huge piece of evidence. Her phone, of course, besides the fact that it should be run for incoming and outgoing phone calls, and you physically have the phone, you can pull that up. You don't have to go through the carrier. Text messages, again, you have the phone, just charge it up and you can go through it. Phone should be dusted for fingerprints before any of this stuff is done, and also swabbed for DNA. Did the perpetrator or traitors, did they touch the phone? Did they get their DNA on it? That would be slam dunk evidence, right? So all of those tests need to be done on this phone. But yeah, great thing, the phone was recovered. And as far as for the investigation, that is a home run to find that phone. One of the, when I was speaking before about an extensive canvas of the area surrounding the crime scene, I can't attest and say, oh, that was definitely done. I don't know if it was done, but guess what? It should have been done, right? That's where stuff is disregarded. Evidence is disregarded. And many times, perpetrators of crimes, they don't use their head. They're like, oh, let me just take this stuff with me and get rid of it somewhere else. They'll dump it in the woods thinking that, oh, no one's going to check this. And lo and behold, boom, you find a murder weapon, whether it be a blunt instrument or a handgun, or you find ballistic evidence, or you find any type of evidence that could be used, or an instrument that could have been used to kill Debbie Collier. So again, a recanvas of that area. I'm very interested to know, when I spoke before about areas of exit and entry into the crime scene, were there tire tracks next to that van that showed that another vehicle had pulled up on the scene? If there wasn't, we have to question, was there someone in that van with Debbie that she brought to that scene? That could have happened also, right? So we want to know the answers to those questions. We don't know the answers now, but very, very important. I would also interview the local police that had patrolled that area the night before, because there was a report that they spotted that van, and there was an indication that that van was there since 5 p.m. the day before. That gives you a window of when the murder could have occurred. That gives you a window of how long that van was there. That gives you a window when you question someone who's a suspect, to question them, to know this window and tighten that window of time. Where were you in such a time? Because we know that the perpetrators committed this crime, and all the other evidence, time of death. That's why time of death is so important. And in this instance, can they pinpoint it? We know when she drove to that area, then we can look at science, rigor mortis, algor mortis, body temperature, things like that to determine time of death, then cause of death, and all those things. So all of these things are so damn important. And when we just take some of these things for granted and we don't examine it, we don't really look deeply, or we do a half-assed job. And I'm not saying they did a half-assed job, but I wonder if they recanvassed that area, or if they canvassed the crime scene areas of exit and entry. Very, very important. And is it too late? No, you could go back. You could definitely go back and see what happened. But it probably should have been done a couple of days ago. But if it wasn't, you could still do it. You could still go through the crime scene and see if you find anything.
Amanda Bearden has any acquaintances or friends, family in the area?
Like the investigator Kaysen said, we can't confirm that right now. I'm sure once we start getting some of these subpoenas and search warrants back on these phone records, we'll be able to give an answer on that at that time.
When was the last time Amanda told you all she saw her mom? And can you confirm a report that Debbie's husband, Steve, was working during the time of Debbie's disappearance?
All right, so what we can confirm as far as that question right there is that we know that Amanda talked on the phone with her mother on Saturday afternoon. I'll have to look back at my notes from the actual report itself to be able to give you some kind of actual time for it. But the last time she spoke to her mom was on the phone. As far as Steve working, we have pulled video from Synovus Bank where he stated that he was working that day because of being a UGA gang. He works for a private company called the Optimus Club that private contracts Synovus Bank's parking lot to park vehicles for the game day. They use that parking lot to provide parking for people coming to the game. We have confirmed that he was there from, I'm making sure I get the times right, from 9 to 4:06, 9 a.m. to 4:06 p.m. on Saturday.
I'm Nora Almazon at WCHM. Do you have any reason?
So, folks, they're looking at also at the husband. He had an alibi between 9 a.m. and I think it was 4:15 p.m. that he was parking cars that day. They didn't, apparently, husband and wife didn't sleep in the same bed because the husband was a huge snorer, which is not unusual. HSFX, do they know where the money is now? Did the daughter give it back? HSFX, I think that it would be a routine for law enforcement to freeze that account, to not let anything happen to the money. So I don't know that they specifically did that, but I think that routinely that would be done. Kim Allison, thank you so much for the $10 super sticker. Guys, this is an interesting case. It really is. We're all expecting and waiting and hoping that there's an arrest forthcoming in this case. We're looking at this case. Jessica Sonny, Lisa K. Yeah, I think they know how much more than what they are saying, and they are saying a lot already. You're referring to the potential perpetrators. Is that what you're saying, or are you referring to the police? Well, as Pony, Supreme Commander, thank you for the factual confirmation and valued experience. NYPD detective explanation. You guys are very, very welcome. I think that it's good to put some real world and real experience out there and to tell you how the crime scene should be processed, the evidence they should have been looking for. When I talk about the areas of entrance and exit into a crime scene, Coach, law enforcement do not predict anything. They just collect the facts of the incident and confer with bosses and the DA. That's right, Coach. They collect the evidence and then they do draw conclusions, because once the evidence reaches a level where it gives them probable cause to arrest someone, that's what the basis of probable cause is. And I gave you guys the definition yesterday of what probable cause is. And probable cause is facts and circumstances that would allow a reasonable person to believe that a crime has been committed and that the person arrested committed the crime. That's right out of the textbook what probable cause is. And we had mentioned yesterday also that search warrants are also based upon probable cause. So for a judge to issue a search warrant, the detective or the investigator or the district attorney must present facts and circumstances to the judge that indicate that this evidence is connected with a crime. And it's reasonable to believe that the person who were serving this warrant on, we have probable cause to believe that they're involved in criminal activity in regards to this case. So again, it's not just the law just doesn't issue warrants with no reason. Just like we cannot arrest someone with no reason. There's a standard to arrest someone, and it's called probable cause. And probable cause just makes someone arrestable. It doesn't mean they did it. It doesn't prove anything, but it does allow them to be arrested. And then in these cases like murders, there's something called a grand jury. And a grand jury is impaneled and they're presented with evidence, and they determine whether there's enough evidence for them to vote to indict the person and to proceed and come down with what's called a true bill, which is an indictment. And then the criminal process will move forward. So there's methodology to all of this stuff. None of it is just happenstance. We're seeing this case play out, and they're working hard to establish probable cause. They're working hard to get evidence so that they can establish probable cause against someone, and then they'll move forward with it. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. If you like this channel, please go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. A lot of people have been subscribing over this case when they see the knowledge level we have from firsthand experience investigating homicides in New York City, specifically in Manhattan. Well, Phil actually was from Brooklyn. We also, folks, have a Patreon if you want to support us. We have 3 different levels you can support us on our Patreon. And we have a YouTube channel memberships where we have 5 different levels. And you can see the folks in the chat that have the green font. They're part of our YouTube channel members. And we really appreciate all the support we get from our channel members. And it's really important to us that we have great subscribers, great folks that support Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. And you guys are as loyal to us, and we hope we're loyal to you in presenting these cases in a professional manner, backed up by experience, and digging into them and really learning about these cases so that we can give you the facts and circumstances. So, and I believe that it makes it more interesting. There's a lot of content on YouTube, a lot of people covering this case. And again, it's a really, really interesting case. And everyone is hoping for a positive closure to this case. Seeing all kinds of new names here. Great to see some new people here that I haven't seen before. Jessica Sonny, it is also strange. This is a real head scratcher. Yeah, it is, but the evidence is leaning a certain way. Josephine, SEK20, big fan of your work. Thank you. Stockholm, Sweden. Josephine, thank you so much. Very much appreciated. I love to see the folks from other countries, the people from across the pond. Kim Alliston, thank you for the 10 super sticker. Very much appreciated. Momo Shark, purchased items could very well just been in a car and the used in the spur of the moment. She left around 3:17 and crossed scene around 5 p.m. that day. Thank you, Momo Shark. I think that's, all of these time stamps are always so important in an investigation, just so important. And that's what those timestamps are what's used once these cases get to a court of law and it goes forward. Folks, I'm up on an hour and it goes so fast when I'm talking to you guys, when I'm talking about these cases. They're so damn interesting. Look at that Duty Ron. Duty Ron's even a fan. Sergeant Bill, do you recommend that civilians go back to the scene where her body was recovered? There are people doing that and using it on YouTube channels. What's the upside and downside to that? Duty Ron, I just spoke about that. I think that's horrendous. That crime scene, even after the fact, should be left pristine because law enforcement may have to go back to that crime scene. And I also spoke about how earlier on I was a little bit perturbed by the fact that whoever processed that crime scene left all kinds of garbage there. I mean, I think you should clean up the crime scene. It just comes across as being extremely unprofessional. And as I said, there is a good possibility that investigators may have to go back to that crime scene for a recanvass, for a research. And if civilians are trouncing through that crime scene and taking pictures, and I don't, it's not a good look. It's not a good look at all. This is the transparency that people demand now. They demand this. To use a little accent from Europe, it's demanding that every bit of information is out there, but they could hurt the case by contaminating the crime scene. There's many times in a homicide investigation where investigators leave a crime scene and then they realize, oh my God, we got to go back there and do a B run. The first run in a crime scene in New York City is called the A run. If you have to go back, there's a B run. There may be a C, D, E, F, G, H that could go right through the alphabet and go back and do additional runs. But if people from the community are contaminating the crime scene, what good would any evidence be? A defense attorney could say, hey, it was well publicized where that crime scene was. How do we know someone didn't just plant this evidence there? Civilians just destroyed the crime scene. Yeah. In the name of transparency, in the name of everyone needs to know about this, when really no one needs to know about it except the investigators and the people involved in this case. Folks, I want to thank everyone for coming by today. Again, a very interesting case. And as I said, don't ever forget that there's a real victim to this case. Debbie Collier was a real woman, 59 years old, a mom, a friend. We have to remember all those things. We can't just think of this as as someone that was the victim of a murder. So, folks, again, thank you so much. I'm going to be staying on this case. I'll be reporting on it again. I know Duty Ron and some other, who is one of the main content creators who I respect, former NYPD detective. He's going to be covering this case. So tune in to Duty Ron. Guys, thank you so much. Have a great day and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.